So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Oh, it's great to be here, and it's great to be in Leicester too. On a sunny day.
Yeah. The summer is here.
Let's hope so.
So it's great to have you on. So I'll let you introduce yourself because you'll do a far better job of it than me. So you are from Anthony Nolan.
Yeah, I'm the chief executive of Anthony Nolan, and I've been the chief executive for 15 years. And I absolutely love my job. It's an utter privilege to do the work that I do.
And always been in the charity sector?
Yeah, no, I'm a complete charity wonk. So apart from a couple of years in the private sector, I've worked for mental health, and then I worked for Shelter, the homelessness charity. And then for the last 15 years, I've been at Anthony Nolan, saving the lives of people with blood cancer. And we're now giving 4 people every single day a second chance of life. So
wow.
It's just, it's amazing. It's amazing. But it's all thanks to people like Next supporting us, and the volunteers that go onto our register and are willing to donate their stem cells to a stranger. It's quite magical, actually, the work that goes on, I think.
Could you explain a little bit more about the work? Because I think it's maybe something that, I personally would like to know more about what goes into that, because I guess as well, the name Anthony Nolan, where's that come from as well? What's that got to it?
Yeah. So Anthony Nolan was a little boy, and in 1974, his mum, Shirley Nolan, realised that he needed a transplant. So he had a blood disorder called Wiskott-Aldrich, and they were living in Australia, and it became really clear that there was no way of finding someone who could donate their bone marrow in those days, or stem cells as we call it today.
1974,
1974.
Yeah.
And in those days, there just was no way of finding somebody, and that was the way to cure this disease, was to have a transplant, a stem cell transplant. So she had heard about one that had happened, or something that had happened in the UK. So she came here, and in 1974 she established Anthony Nolan in the name of her son, the charity. And 50 years later, here we are today. So it's a massive year for us, a massive anniversary. And since then, we've given 26,000 people a second chance of life. Because in those days, in 1986, they did 12 transplants a year. And
12 a year?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're now doing, 1,600. So it's seen so much progress. And her legacy and the love, I just always think, it's the love of a mother for her son has saved the lives of millions of people around the world. There are now 70 registers in the world, 42 million people on those registers willing to donate their stem cells to a stranger to save their life. And it all started with a little boy, Anthony Nolan. And I always think he changed the world, or his mum changed the world. Very sadly, he died in 1979. They couldn't find a match in those days. You're talking probably 20, 30 people joining a register at that point. But she was a amazing campaigner. She campaigned, and she went and stood outside 10 Downing Street in the days that you could stand outside, and she got arrested. And we've just had a kind of ceremony and a celebration at 10 Downing Street. And I think she would have a wry smile on her face that we were celebrating inside the very building that she demonstrated outside. And she got arrested, but then at the funeral of Anthony, the very policeman that had arrested her did a guard of honour, and they all joined the register. And I think it just shows the real power of the cause and the passion, and it is just amazing. So that register, to answer your first question, is made up of people willing to donate their stem cells, and you can join the register between 16 and 30.
Why particularly that age?
Because if you're younger, your cells are just a bit more healthy, and
so
you're we
want young, healthy cells.
Yeah. Sadly, you and I are probably just outside that.
Now.
Just outside. But no, we need young cells, particularly men, because they tend to be bigger, so there are more cells, but they also don't get pregnant. So that's kind of helpful. But you can stay on till you're 61. So you may come up as a match, but in terms of what we really, really need and what tends to get, about 80% of the people that get chosen are going to be under 30. But obviously there's often a match, a rare match that will come from people over 30.
So is it matching the blood type, or is it matching the
tissue type?
Tissue type. So even though it's blood cancer, it's not blood.
Yeah, well, it's cancer of the immune system, actually. But and what's complicated is that in blood you have A, B, O, and that's about it. There's 6 or 7 varieties. With your tissue type or your HLA, you're talking millions.
Oh, really?
And millions. So finding a match is really, really difficult.
Oh, okay.
So at Anthony Nolan, we have 900,000 people on our register. And as I said, worldwide, there are 42 million. But it's still difficult if you're looking for what they call an unrelated match. So somebody you've never met, you don't know, a stranger. Your chances, if you're white, Caucasian, your chances are around 70%. But if you're from an ethnic minority background, your chances drop to 37%.
Oh, really? And what's the reason for that?
It's complicated, and it's a lot to do with science. But if you're thinking about people coming from the African continent, the differences in their tissue type are massive. There are more differences between one region in Africa and another region in Africa than there are between one region and a white Caucasian. So it's just phenomenal, which is why cord blood is so important. And going back to the lovely, sweet baby grow and how we're going to be promoting that to new mums, we also collect cord blood. And we have a collection site in Leicester, in the hospital there, in the maternity unit. And that cord blood, you can match with a patient with kind of more mismatches, if you see what I mean. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect.
Okay.
So it allows for a little bit more mismatching, as we would call it.
Okay.
So that's more helpful and hopeful for people from ethnic minorities quite often.
Wow.
So that's why the employee unity and thinking about our aims around equity and equity of outcomes for all our patients and that health. That's why it's so important, and we're just so delighted to be working with Next and the support you're giving us.
It's a really good collaboration between Unity at Next, and for those that might not know that are listening or watching, so Unity at Next is one of our employee-led communities, like Pride and Able, but Unity is specifically partnering with yourselves, aren't they, to really drive that. And that's why then, because of, like you've said, because of that stat there between the differences. Yeah. And I didn't know, to be honest, that I knew there was a lot more variations. I didn't realise there was, you're talking millions.
It's huge. So we have to look at it like a kind of multi-pronged attack. So if you're lucky, you might have a sibling that matches you. If not, you go to what's called the unrelated, which are the people on our register. But you also look at cord, which is what we've just talked about, the cord blood from the umbilical cord when a baby is born, which is actually just thrown away. And it's normally just incinerated. And it's just full of all this beautiful, magical stem cells that can save a life. So it's just amazing, really amazing.
Yeah. So as you said, you are the CEO, but what's Anthony Nolan made up of? It's not just is it just volunteers? Is it people? Give us a break.
No, it's all paid staff. So we've got around 450 paid staff at Anthony Nolan, and 150 of those are scientists. So we've got labs and we've got research. So obviously for us, it's really important to try and improve the treatment and make it less toxic and kinder. So we're always looking at ways that we can improve matching, understand more about that, and improve those outcomes. Then we've got operations, which is our biggest department. So if you're a patient and you're in need of a transplant, we start looking for you. So we start searching what is the world or the global database. So we're looking at 42 million people trying to find you a match. So it's looking
like
like
a needle in
a haystack.
It is
Absolutely,
literally
a needle in a haystack.
Literally is a needle in a haystack. Yeah.
And then hopefully we find one, or we might find two, depending on how rare you are or how common you are. And that person might be in the UK, but they might not be. So in operations, we are finding domestic supply of stem cells, but we're also importing from all around the world. So it could be from Germany or France or Australia. And we also export. So we're also exporting our domestic supply to people all around the world who are also in need of a match. So it's the most amazing and wonderful community of just these cells kind of, whizzing around the world, saving lives. And all the couriers that take those cells are volunteers.
Really?
So quite often retired people, often retired doctors. And I mean, I couldn't do it. I would be so anxious.
A lot of pressure.
Yeah,
a lot of pressure.
A
right?
lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But we have, you have your sort of, it looks like a cool box, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's got this precious
for that one
cargo
person.
for that one person.
Ooh.
And I know. And they have to fly out and get it and bring it back to the UK. And that goes on to save a life. And you've really only got 48 hours to get it back.
Oh,
because the cells start to die. So you're up against great pressure.
Sense. Yeah.
So you can imagine in COVID,
virtually,
with flights stopping, borders stopping, we had the most extraordinary time. We had to
I bet that was tough as well.
Yeah, and we had to set up a hub in Heathrow so that so couriers could come in, drop the cells and pass them over to somebody else. We had people meeting on bridges. Honestly, it was like out of a spy film, handing over stem cells just to ensure that our patients got their cells. Yeah, so it was quite a time.
And that was all volunteers doing that still as well.
All volunteers. I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
People are genuinely amazing, I think.
It sounds like they're embodying like the story you told at the start of how it got founded. Really, that's kind of inspired these people to carry on.
Yeah.
To carry on.
Yeah.
Pushing and doing the remarkable almost as well.
Yeah, and I think she was such a pioneer, Shirley Nolan, the mum of Anthony Nolan. She was, and that innovation, and she did not take no for an answer. Absolutely wouldn't take no.
She'd get on well at Next.
Yeah.
Would she? She'd enjoy Next.
Okay.
Yeah, that innovation and pushing forward is something that.
No, and it matters, doesn't it? It really
does.
matters to do things well and for us to save lives. So, yeah, lots of research. So operations there's a very complex. It's loads of logistics, which some of your staff will probably be really familiar with.
Yeah.
The logistics of getting from A to B on time and making sure all of that delivery. So
yeah, a lot of the product teams will absolutely be nodding their head, going, "I relate to this."
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. The pressure.
Except it's clothing, and you're dealing with lives.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But it's
added
all
pressure,
important. It's
added
all
pressure,
important.
added pressure.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there 50 years now of Anthony Nolan, which is great. That it's a great milestone to hit. I mean, we're not quite at 50 yet, but it's what's the goal now? Like, what are you focusing on? Like, what you're trying to achieve? Because I guess that's shifted over the years, has it? Or,
it has. So in 2014, we introduced our patient services, which was really to provide information and that wraparound care for all our patients, and to provide grants, because often they can't work when they're going through a transplant. It's a long process for them. They're often in hospital at least 6 weeks.
Ooh.
So providing grants, providing wraparound care, support, counselling, and loads of information. And we fund nurses. They're called CNSs, so the clinical nursing support, specialised support. And they are working with our patients, excuse me, actually on in the hospitals as well. So that's been an amazing kind of innovation to make sure that everybody is supported throughout that journey. But now, yes, we've got a new strategy, a new 5-year strategy, which is unlocking the cures for every patient. And I think it's really important to focus on that because that's what we're really keen to do. And we have 3 aims. One is around survival, which is how do we improve those outcomes and ensure everybody gets those stem cells. The second is about equity. So how do we ensure all patients have the same chance of a cure, a treatment and a transplant, and working really hard. So we've got a really innovative project in India. So we're supporting the register in India to recruit in areas where we know we have the population here in the UK.
Got you.
So those people, and it's mainly northern India, we've recruited 3,000, we've funded that through a grant from the NIHR, and those people are already going on to save lives, and that's really extraordinary kind of statistics. I mean, the need is so there. So that's really fantastic. It's quite a small project, but we see it as a pilot. So it's just trying to be creative around how we kind of meet the needs. So equity really matters to us. And then the last one, which is progress. So I'm sure lots of you will have heard about kind of stem cell and gene therapy.
Yeah.
And I think it is the future of all treatment, particularly for cancer. And at Anthony Nolan, obviously, we've got this incredible asset. We've got all these stem cells. We've got people willing to donate and willing to donate for research as well as for clinical use. And we've got all this cord blood as well. So we're now providing cells for research, not only into blood cancer, but other diseases.
That's
and
really good.
One of the things that we're providing from our cord blood, or the kind of placenta, it gets made into these incredible eye drops.
Right, okay.
And the eye drops are curing a form of blindness for people.
No.
So
from a placenta?
Yeah.
What?
Honestly, I mean, I'll tell you what, these stem cells are magic. They are just amazing. They're amazing. And I think that will be the future. I mean, if they can crack it around solid tumours, that will make a massive difference to outcomes for cancer. So, yeah, it's incredibly exciting. And, yeah, I don't know what the future brings, but I think stem cells are going to be at the heart of that.
There's
definitely.
so many complexities to it as well.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So many complexities to it. You wouldn't think, and I think this is what I've learned with a lot of the charities that Next collaborate with. It's not just give us some money and then we can give it to scientists. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, no. I think, yeah, and we're quite a complex. Yeah, we are a complex organisation because it is that saving, that kind of urgency, saving a life today. But then we've got all that wraparound care going on, and the nurses and the doctors, and then we've got research, and then we've got all this future stuff. This really amazing science and where stem cells are going to take us.
Feels like as well you're creating like this global network as well that's all interlinked as a not on a literally down to ourselves. It's not anything else. It's not where you live or what nationality or anything like that. It's literally we just want to understand people's cells and then bring it all together.
Yeah.
And that's kind of trying to match all that up. And is it, say someone wants to donate in that category, that 16 to 30, did you say?
Yes, 16 to 30.
Is it fairly straightforward as well, just for someone to donate?
Yeah, you can go on the website and you can just ask for a pack. And the way that you join the register is, and this will be familiar, sadly, to all of us, you do a quick cheek swab.
Yeah, very familiar.
Very familiar. And you just post that back, and that then goes to our lab. And you get tissue typed, and that tissue type goes onto the register, and there you are, waiting.
Just waiting.
Yeah, and you may never come up as a match, but just by doing that, I think it's an amazing step, actually. It's so altruistic. And if you then come up as a match, we would be talking to you and supporting you through the process. You have about 3 days of injections, which is an injection which kind of mobilizes all your stem cells. It's called GCSF. So if you bash your elbow, actually all the stem cells will rush to your elbow.
And that's why it goes
to
red.
heal it. Well, yes, and they kind of heal it.
Yeah.
So that's what this injection does. It just makes lots of stem cells whiz around. So, and then after 3 days of those injections, you can donate, and you go into hospital, and you're supported by volunteers again, and you sit. It's kind of like giving blood,
right?
But both arms are kind of, you can't do anything with them. So people kind of say, actually, it's really boring because I'm stuck for about 4 hours onto this machine, and the kind of blood goes out, whizzes round, they take out the stem cells and then back in.
Okay.
And you might feel a little fluey for about 24 hours, but that's it.
How clever that it... So it takes the stem cells out and then gives you the blood back.
Yeah, really
That's
clever.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and then in a little bag, and then
that's the bag that goes in the cooler.
That's the magic bag that goes in the cooler that then a volunteer comes to get, and off it goes
48
wherever.
hours off you go.
Yeah. I know.
And then that would get transported to the patient, and similar process the other end for it to go.
Well, they kind of hook it up to
like an IV,
like a drip, like an IV, and that gets put into the patient, and that's it. I mean, lots of patients sort of say it's a bit of an anticlimax in a way, because you kind of think, what's this great big thing going to be, and then this little bag turns up. But yeah, that's the life-giving cells. So it's quite an amazing process, really.
And then sorry, I'm getting really into the technical here. Is it then, do the cells just work with the new cells from the donor just kind of merging with, how does that work? Yeah.
So for the patient, you almost have to kill off their immune system. So the immune system that is really faulty, that is causing the cancer, and your immune system comes from your bone marrow.
Yep.
So that has to be killed off. So that's not great. You've got about 4 or 5 horrible days of chemotherapy. So that gets killed off, and then you get the new cells, and they become your new immune system. I mean,
that's incredible.
Quite extraordinary.
That is absolutely incredible.
And then patients often tell us that they discover that they'd always hated Marmite, and now they love it. And then if they're lucky enough to meet their donor, the donor will say, "Oh yeah, I love Marmite."
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So there's
So little things get.
No.
Yeah, it's true. Honestly, it's true. Yeah.
Is it just Marmite, or is there other little things?
No, other little things. Little things like, I don't know, I suddenly like sardines, or I hated coffee and now I can drink coffee, or just very weird things. Or sometimes their hair changes as well. So it becomes curly, not curly. But although that might be the chemo. But but yeah, no, people do find that things, and they become allergic to things that they weren't allergic to, because obviously they've got somebody's complete immune system that wasn't theirs, but it's a match. I know it is. I'm not a scientist and I'm not a doctor, but it is quite fascinating how
it almost
sounds
works. Like fictional in a way.
It is. I always call it a slightly magic, really.
Yeah.
It is magic. Yeah. Although I think the body is so clever, isn't it?
Yeah. I think we underestimate how complex it. I think you've got one, and it's just it's there,
isn't it? Yeah.
You've got your eyes, and you see your hands, and occasionally yourself in the mirror. But I don't think if you actually sit down and think about it, it's like even if you cut yourself or anything.
Yeah. What's happening?
And you're like, and then a few days later, it's like that's gone, completely healed.
Yeah. Those are those stem cells doing that.
And what's making you, like, for 15 years, that's a long time to do anything. I mean, I've been in this role for coming up to 15 years, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and, to do it for that time, you've got to, I feel you've got to have some sort of drive there, or passion, or there's something there. What is it for you?
I do think, as we've just been talking about, I think Anthony Nolan is a remarkable charity and what it does, giving 4 people a second chance of life every single day. It doesn't get much better than that unless we can get it to 5, really. That's the way I look at it. I think it's such an interesting organisation as well, in terms of the science. So we've always been driving things forward, whether it was we were really driving and galvanising people to join the register, and we continue to do that. The patient services, opening the cord blood in collection site in 4 hospitals, and in Nottingham is our kind of cell and gene therapy centre where it all kind of gets processed. Opening that to now looking at how we can support pharma and academia with stem cells into new research, new diseases. All the time there is something new coming along. So I'm never bored, and I work with the most amazing people.
Right.
I think the people at Anthony Nolan are fantastic, and we have amazing supporters like Next, and it just makes it worthwhile. And I meet interesting people like yourself, it's great, and like Joe. It's really good. But I think for me personally, I've always worked for charity. I've worked for mental health, I've worked for homelessness. And I think there was a time when I was working for mental health, and I went to, in those days they were shutting all the mental health asylums. And it was quite a long time ago. And people were being put into the community, which was a really good thing. And I went to what was called a halfway house. It was kind of like a transition.
From the asylum back into society.
Yeah. And there were a group of women living in this house, and I went and had, a cup of tea with them. And they were having a lesson to learn about money, because they'd never been outside in the world. And they were probably in their 60s and 70s. And they had been locked up essentially for 30, 40 years. And I asked why had they been locked up, what had happened to them. And for most of them, they'd had illegitimate children. And in those days, they were put away. It was not okay. And I just thought, people who have no voice, and that really mattered to me. And it's about, and it always sounds a bit trite, doesn't it, when you say I want to make a difference, but I think that really motivates me to give people a voice. And in my job now at Anthony Nolan, it's very much about giving the patient a voice, and we do a lot of work to ensure the patient, wherever possible and where it's appropriate, is involved in thinking about our work, whether it's a fundraising campaign, trying to get their voice in our kind of research projects. We funded clinical trials, the first clinical trial network in the UK for transplant, and ensuring that the patient's voice is heard in that process too. And I think it's really important, because at any point in our lives, sadly, we may be a patient.
Yeah.
I'm very keen, and it matters to me that people have a voice in what happens to them and that they're listened to. So I think that's what motivates me. What about you? You've been here 15 years too.
Yeah. I don't know, actually. Someone's asked me that before on here. I think what motivates me is just the desire to just keep improving myself and what I do.
Yeah.
I know there's, and sometimes it's a blessing, and sometimes it probably can be a little bit too much, or maybe put myself under unnecessary pressure. But it's just to improve whatever we do all the time, because you're never going to reach perfection.
No,
that doesn't exist.
No.
So you can always improve, and you can always tweak.
Yeah.
And the business kind of lets that grow and fosters
That's
that.
Great.
And
that
goes,
great.
well, if you want to tweak it, let's
have a go.
Let's have a go. Yeah. And then if it's really good, let's go a little bit more and try that, and let's really push that, because that's really working. So, you even take this podcast as an example. Tried it, tweaked it, and now we're getting guests on like yourself to talk about this, which is great, because it is, some people might be listening to this, go, oh, well, why is it part of Next, or where does it fit in? But it does, because it's part of our culture now. The way we want to be you know, how we want to impact the community as well as selling great products and, you know, being well, we are becoming a global retailer, but we also, there's a lot of people here that do, well, there are people here, like, you know, people make the brand.
Yeah.
And they've all got lives and they're all impacted in different ways, but they also want to make an impact, like you were saying. They want to be able to make that bit of difference. And why not do it while making great clothes or supporting that as well?
Yeah, no, and it's fantastic, and it's great to hear. You're a brilliant interviewer as well. So. No,
it's a new skill that's growing.
It's great. It's really good. It's really good. Yeah, no, and I think we're coming here on the 28th of May, which is World Cancer Day or World Cool Blood Day, to recruit some people. So
yeah, and we're all, it's always something we're doing, and always something that we're asking, whether we do it as a pop-up event or a day, to really highlight it, or if you can't make it in on that day, or you're working in Aberdeen in one of our stores, we get that, like. But then, like you said,
go on the website,
use the swab. Like it sounds, it must take like a couple of minutes.
Couple of minutes, and then you just need to put it back in the
then
envelope, and then you're done. And then you might save a life.
Yeah, which is incredible.
It's pretty good.
It's incredible.
Yeah, no, and we really appreciate the work that Unity has done to bring us in. I think it's a great initiative, and I just really love the way that it's employee led.
Yes. They all are. They all are.
Yeah.
All are. We used to call them networks, but we've kind of talked about it and we've changed it to communities.
Yeah.
Purely because to make that distinction that it is backed and supported by the business, absolutely, and you know it's what the business want to do, but it's really for the people to drive that and say, this is what we should be doing. So that, you know, that's where the partnership with Anthony Nolan came from. It wasn't, you know, someone on the board or someone in HR going, this is what we must do. It was the network saying, this is a great fit for Unity and for Next. And then it grows.
It's so powerful then, isn't it? And I think and Anthony Nolan is about communities.
Oh, yeah, but globally.
Globally.
Yeah.
Globally. So it absolutely kind of fits, doesn't it, in terms of what we're both doing and thinking about. Yeah.
Well, it's been absolutely fantastic to have you on. I love coming on and learning about new stuff. It's great, and I really appreciate you taking the time to, you know, talk through what it means, because I think the educational side's important, but also what, you know, the why and the people behind that as well. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you to Next and all your employees. Really appreciate it. Thank you.